Decision 2010, Before You Vote, is a special election year series brought to you by Leadership Florida, putting Florida first. The Florida Press Association, the trade association for Florida's newspapers, providing communities across Florida with the news and information relevant to their life. With underwriting by Nova Southeastern University, a private not-for-profit research university. The Florida Association of Insurance Agents, your trusted choice. You need an independent insurance agent. The Florida League of Mayors, the trusted voice for our communities. AARP Florida, the power to make it better. The Claude Pepper Center and Foundation, dedicated to enhancing the well-being of Florida seniors and preserving American democracy. Florida Philanthropic Network, building philanthropy to build a better Florida. Now, from the beautiful campus of Nova Southeastern University in Davie, Florida, Decision 2010 Before You Vote presents the candidates for the office of Governor of Florida. And now, your host, from WFOR-TV CBS 4, Antonio Mora.
Welcome to the Florida gubernatorial debate. Tonight's event is being broadcast by a number of stations across the state so we can reach as many voters as possible. The two candidates running for governor of Florida are Democrat Alex Sink and Republican Rick Scott. The candidates will each have 1 minute and 15 seconds to respond to questions, and they will be signaled by a clock that is located on the stage. We will allow the candidates, on some occasions, a 30-second rebuttal. Our panel tonight includes Antonio Finns with the South Florida Sun-Sentinel, Kelly Dunn with WPTV in West Palm Beach, and Adam Smith with the St. Petersburg Times. We have asked the audience to hold this applause and the candidates to follow the guidelines presented to them before this broadcast. Our time is limited, so let's get started. The coin toss went to Alex Sink, and we begin with a question to you. We'll begin again tonight with jobs, the question that, of course, is most important to Florida voters. You have proposed spurring hiring by a series of tax cuts and tax credits, and to pay for that, you're talking about some spending cuts. Your opponent is talking about cutting $6 billion and bringing the government back to size that it was back in 2004. Where exactly are you going to cut spending, and how many jobs are you expecting to create?
Well, thank you, Antonio, and I want to thank the viewers and the people in the audience, and most particularly the sponsors of this very important debate, so that people all over the state of Florida can hear directly from their gubernatorial candidates. This is a very important election for our state. The whole reason I'm running for governor is because I'm bringing my 26 years of business experience right here in the state of Florida to address the critical economic challenges that we have in our state today. Very high unemployment, 2 percentage points higher than the national average. So we've got to get our state headed in a different direction. My plan calls for, and I put together a very specific plan almost 10 months ago now, my plan calls for reviving our economy in the short term. And it's built all around small businesses because, you know, Florida's not a state of large corporations. Our state was built on entrepreneurs and people who started up small businesses. And that's what I spent my career doing. So I'm providing for tax cuts for businesses who agree to hire more Floridians, very targeted. I'm also providing a plan for reviving our economy and remaking and diversifying our economy by bringing new industries into the state. I will be a very aggressive economic ambassador for our state.
Mr. Scott, sure. Let's get to work is your motto, the basis of your campaign. You have proposed what you call a 777 plan. 7 years, 700,000 jobs, 7 steps in 7 years to 700,000 jobs. But some state economists have said that if there is an economic recovery, no matter who's governor, the economy will actually generate more than those 700,000 jobs in just 4 years. How do you respond to that?
Sure. Well, first I'd like to thank Leadership Florida, the Florida Press Association, and Nova Southeastern for doing this, and everybody for watching. Also, I want to thank my family. My wife, who I met in high school, we've been married 38 years, is here. My mom, it's her 82nd birthday. Maybe you've seen a few ads with her. And then my daughter Allison and her husband Pierre. So our plan is 7 steps to 700,000 jobs, and that plan is on top of what normal growth would be. And our plan says, you know, basically we're going to get the state back to work by running the state like a business. Watch how you spend every penny. Reduce regulation. I'll put a freeze on regulation. I'm going to be the jobs governor. I'm going to go out every day and do what I've done in business. Go out and figure out how to get people to build their businesses. And then I'm going to cut property taxes by the rate by 19% and phase out the business tax. We'll be the #1 state. But one thing I want to do tonight, I'm sure Alex and I are going to trade a lot of barbs, but I want to compliment her and commend her on one thing. You know, our state, budget is in a mess, and she, like I, am not going to take any state taxpayer funding for our campaigns, which I think is a great thing. So,
a quick follow-up, though. If you are going to add 700,000 jobs on top of what the economic recovery would bring, we're talking about, in 7 years, about 1.7 million jobs. There are not only, but there are currently 1 million Floridians unemployed. That's an awful lot of jobs.
We're going to grow the state. I mean, my whole goal is we're going to grow this state. This state should be the #1 state for job creation. No income tax. We're a right-to-work state. We've got beaches, weather. Look at the growth in the economies in Central and South America. Look at the expansion of the Panama Canal. We're going to grow this state. This should be the #1 state for job creation. It's going to take a governor that knows how to build private sector jobs, and that's exactly what I'm going to do.
Ms. Sink, a rebuttal to that?
Yes. I might add that in looking at Rick Scott's plan, that Jeb Bush's own economic advisor has said that it's flawed and it can't work. To take the budget back to 1994, $54 billion would mean cutting $18 billion out of the budget, and we'd all be interested in hearing how we cut $18 billion out of the current budget. I also think it's important to recognize that Rick Scott, my opponent, talks about creating 285,000 jobs, but the way he did it was that he was a corporate raider. He went and bought hospitals all around the country and shut many of them down, some of them right here in Florida. That's how he built his business.
We will get to those questions soon enough. Our first question from the panel, Adam Smith.
Hi, Mr. Scott. Part of your plan is to cut the state workforce by 5%. That would be at least 6,000 jobs. Is this the right time in this recession to put 6,000 at least Floridians on the unemployment lines?
Sure. Well, as you know, every year, my plan is it's getting 7 steps to 700,000 jobs. And we're going to watch how we spend every dollar. So part of it is we're going to reduce the workforce. If you look at every year, if we reduce the workforce 5%, it's $300 million. Every year we have somewhere between generally 12 to 16% attrition in our workforce in the government. So we'll be able to do it just through normal change. We'll do everything we can to keep everybody employed. But, look, we've got to get this money back into the hands of the taxpayers, the people that build businesses, the people who are worried about making sure that they can make ends meet. The more we do that, people will build their businesses. This country, this state is built on people that want to build their businesses. As more of the money we get back into their pockets, this economy will grow. Now, again, my opponent's going to start attacking. We built a wonderful company. We took care of 100,000 patients a day. We had unbelievable outcomes, unbelievable patient satisfaction, unbelievable. We reduced the cost of health care. I'm very proud of what we accomplished.
Ms. Sink, I want to ask you, let's say you had been elected governor 4 years ago. Very specifically, what significant concrete steps would you have taken to ensure that our economy is better shaped than it is right now?
Well, I would have taken several different and more specific steps. First, we've been in this recession for 3 years now. It started with the subprime crisis, particularly hitting Southwest Florida very, very hard. Lots of rampant mortgage fraud. This is what I would have done in the last 3 or 4 years as governor. I would have expedited transportation projects. These transportation projects that we have that have already been funded, it takes too long, 18, 24, 36 months to put those jobs on the ground. I would have streamlined regulation so that we could have expedited more transportation projects. I also would have been more aggressive as an economic ambassador. When I'm the governor, I'm going to wake up every day and ask for a list of names of companies for me to call, to recruit to come to Florida, or also for companies who are here right now who want to grow and to expand, and offer them my helping hand to assist them so that barriers are removed and we've got the right policies in place. And another thing that has happened is that we're in a critical situation over in the Space Coast. We knew 3 or 4 years ago that it was possible that the federal government would be reducing funding of NASA, and I would have gotten on top of that right away.
Thank you. Kelly Dunn.
Ms. Sink, the next governor will be in crisis mode almost immediately upon taking office, facing a $2 to $3 billion budget shortfall with no stimulus money in sight. Where is that money going to come from?
Well, the estimates of the economists, you're right, are that the deficit could be between, the most recent estimate, between $800 million and $2 billion. And so I have put forth specific suggestions in working with the legislature, of course, in closing that gap. First, part of my business plan calls for reforming government. And I've specifically identified $700 million of savings through cuts in middle management, through other efficiencies like the way the state uses its real estate, and they're all outlined in my plan. Additionally, we have between $2 and $3 billion in Medicaid fraud embedded in our system, as our own accountants have told us. We have to go after that kind of Medicaid fraud and reduce it. And that's the way that I will work with our legislature to close that $2 billion gap so that we don't hurt services to Floridians.
Mr. Scott, how would you come up with the $2 to $3 billion shortfall?
Sure. What I would do is do exactly what's part of step one of my plan. It's called accountability budgeting. You go back and do exactly what you do in a business. You look at every agency and you say, can I do that less expensively? Is it a priority? Should we continue to do that? So if you do that, there are significant savings. We would also, exactly what you do in business, you benchmark other, in this case, you do other states, and you say, can they do it less expensively? Can they get better outcomes? As you do that, you can save significant amounts of money. If you look at my plan, we've benchmarked other states, and we've seen, we can show there's significant savings. Now, my opponent talks about how she can save $700 million. Now, that's Obama math, because on the other side of that, our Senate president has sent her a letter saying, how are you going to pay for the $12.5 billion of new spending your proposals have, your promises have, are going to cost us? What tax does she have to raise? She's already backed taxes and payroll and sales and cable and water. Is she going to have to propose an income tax?
May I respond to that?
You may. You have 30 seconds for a vote.
Well, the first thing I have to respond to is that those charges of those billions of dollars are absolutely outlandish. Rick, we can't trust anything you say. You're out there. You've been throwing mud out.
Hold it down, guys.
You have been throwing mud and negative advertisements ever since the Republican primary, and your charges have been outlandish. There is not a single provision for any kind of tax increase in any of my plans, my transportation plan, my energy plan, my environmental plan, my economic development plan. It's just not there. And this is just a fairy tale fabrication.
A rebuttal?
Okay. You received a letter from Senate President Mike Herodopoulos. You didn't respond. What is the number? You're proposing significant, you have big promises. What is the number that you're proposing? Because we're walking into a $2+ billion deficit. All right? We know we have to save money. Obama math doesn't work here. I mean, you can't reduce it by, say, I'm going to save $700 million, and then you're going to spend $12.5 billion. What is the number, and what tax will you increase?
I have to respond to that.
I will allow you to keep rebutting each other. 30 seconds, please.
I don't know what Obama math is. What I do know is that I was a 4.0 math major at Wake Forest University, and I know how to add numbers.
Let's continue. Antonio Finch.
Let's talk about education. Starting with Mr. Scott. Earlier this year, Governor Christ vetoed legislation that would have directly tied teacher salaries to student performance. If you're elected governor, would you sign that measure if it came back next year, or would you change it?
Sure. I put out a specific education plan, and my education plan starts like this. Our education has to be, this is exciting, it's for the benefit of our kids. Every child in this state has the same opportunity I had. I've lived the American dream. Every child in the state has that same opportunity. But what we've got to do is we've got to look at every child as an individual. Each teacher has to be measured on their effectiveness moving that child from this level to this level. And we've got to compensate them in that manner. We also have to make sure we train our teachers the best way we can. Next, we need to make sure that our parents have all the choices possible. Just because you live on this block doesn't mean you need to go to this public school. You should have the choice of any public school. You should have the choice of a charter school. You should have the choice of homeschooling, virtual school. We've got to make sure there's more choice. Now, my opponent in her education plan does not use the word choice one time. So we have got to make sure we do this. It's for the benefit of kids. We measure our teachers. We've got to pay the best teachers who are most effective the most. and give as much choice to our parents as possible.
Ms. Sink.
I'm sorry.
Same question.
Excuse me.
Let me just clarify. Do I get a
Yeah.
response to
15,
this?
Yes. A full
Thank
minute
you.
15.
Thank you. Well, Rick didn't really answer the question because you asked the question about whether or not he would sign the same legislation that went through the legislature last year. And I've been very clear that I would not sign a bill like Senate Bill 6. And this is the reason why. It's because while parts of the bill provided for performance pay and merit pay for teachers, something that which I very strongly agree with, all the school boards, the superintendents, the parents, the teachers around this state recognize that legislation for what it was, which was it was nothing more than a Tallahassee bureaucrat and politicians taking over control of our local schools. I would never sign a bill like that. My plan is comprehensive. I put together a 27-page education plan because,
But
you know, I'm a proud...
How would you call for accountability, which you do call for in your agenda?
Oh, absolutely.
What specifically?
I do call for accountability. The way to put together a performance pay plan is to get all the stakeholders around the table and you build out what you think are the most important factors. It can't be just one thing like a test given on one day. I would build out a number of factors and I would test it out because in my company I never would have rolled out an incentive compensation plan statewide without knowing whether it would really work and result in the right behaviors. I would have tested it out just to be sure that it was working correctly with the results which we want, which is better performance from our students.
Thank you, Ms. Sink. Adam Smith.
Switch gears to Ms. Sink.